Very brief about Dr. Alassam. He's a graduate of University of Kordofan in Eastern Sudan, Faculty of Medicine. He graduated in 2015. He's a general practitioner doctor. He stopped doing that for the last 2 years. Upon graduation, he worked as a physician in multiple hospitals, public hospitals in Sudan. Alassam is also a member of the Central Committee of Sudanese doctors, which has been fighting for doctors' and patient rights in Sudan. He played a very pivotal and critical role as a spokesperson for the Sudanese Professionals Association, which is spearhead the forces for freedom and change. That coalition that led the social contestation that resulted in doubling the dictatorship regime of Omar al-Bashir. So there is a pamphlet out there on the table, just with a brief about who those organizations are, because they just emerged in the last year or so, the SPS, Sudan Professionals Association, Freedom of Change, Forces of Freedom of Change, and also a speech by Dr. Alassam that when the forces of opposition and pro-democracy signed or celebrating signing the deal between the military junta and the revolutionary forces. So without further ado, I guess we'll give you a couple of key housing. So Alassam will speak for about half an hour or 40 minutes. He is really looking forward to hear from all of you. Any Q&A with that memo, I sent it to you, the questions, like how we wrestle with this idea of, to activate civil society during challenging times, and how we can protect political gain while rebuilding fractional democracy, particularly in context of Sudan, or any other context that you might know. So after he talks, my good friend, Professor May Hassan, she will come and facilitate the Q&A. Thank you, everybody. Please welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. And thank you for Has for organizing this. Dr. Asadi, also thank you very much for organizing this event. And I will try to be as brief as I can, so we would have more and more discussions rather than speeches. I will start by giving some sort of background about what has happened in Sudan in the past year or so. And I will start by speaking about SPA, the Sudanese Professionals Association. So the idea of professionals or labor unions coming together in Sudan is not new. We have, Sudanese people have been doing that throughout the history of Sudan after independence. And to work together, the professionals and the labor unions to work together to make change, political change in Sudan, or to lead a revolution is not new also in Sudan. So we had similar bodies like SPA in the revolution of 1964 and also in the revolution of 1985. Sudan had 3 revolutions by now, removing dictatorship and trying to build a sustainable democracy. So SPA actually started by the end, the idea itself, by the end of 2016. I am a member of the Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors, which was established at January 2016, starting recruiting doctors to help achieving common goals like improving health services in Sudan, working for rights of doctors, and etc. By the end of 2016, Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors actually made 2 strikes, nationwide strikes in October and November, to help improve and to demand the improvement of the health sector in Sudan, provide basic health services, free health services to all the Sudanese patients, And the doctors were faced by brutality of al-Bashir regime, definitely. More than 100 doctors were detained on November. And we started having links with the other professional bodies, like the lawyers and the journalists, who would help throughout the strike itself and afterwards. The lawyers helped in the cases of doctors being arrested or being fired as a consequence of the strike. And the journalists also helped in the issue of media to cover the strike and to cover the different activities of the Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors. So then the idea of us as professionals coming together and work to achieve common goals started to grow after the doctors' strike. And the actual first meeting to discuss forming a new body was by the end of November 2016. From that time on, SPA started growing. We developed a declaration for the Sudanese Professionals Association. We developed the common goals that we will work around, and we started recruiting and welcoming new organizations and bodies to become part of the Sudanese Professionals Association. SPA was formally announced on July 2018, so it took us a lot of time to prepare for the official announcement of SPA. The first thing we started to work on was the minimum wage in Sudan. And we believe that we have to start with something that actually can bring all the different professionals together. So the minimum wage, the salaries, and the working condition was the basic thing that we planned to start with. As the days went by, and after the like 4 months or so, on December 2018, the spontaneous protest in Sudan sparked, and basically they were about the rise on the prices of bread and fuel. Started spontaneously in different cities around Sudan, in al-Bashir, in Atbara, in Port Sudan, in al-Bashir, basically everywhere around Sudan. By then we had SPA structured and organized somehow, and we had the calls and the request from our bases that SPA should lead this, should go forward and lead this spontaneous random protest to something bigger. And of course, we had in our mind the different uprisings that has happened before 2018. The uprisings in the 2013 in September, which was faced brutally by al-Bashir regime, when we lost more than 200 lives, that had no leadership, and that ended very quickly. In less than 2 weeks, more than 289 or something lives were lost with no results. So this time we decided, no, we cannot have this again to happen in December, and we started actually drafting the Declaration of Freedom and Change. We thought that a revolution cannot sustain, especially against a very brutal regime in Sudan, without having very clear demands and goals and a very clear way to do it. So the Declaration of Freedom and Change was like a one-page paper that said very clearly that we are the Sudanese people, and we are going to work to overthrow al-Bashir regime, to build a new system, transitional system that will last for 4 years and that will work to achieve these goals. At that time, in December, the civil society in Sudan, the political opposition parties, were not working together by any means. They were fragmented, isolated, against, as I said, a very brutal regime in Sudan. So one of the ideas why we developed this declaration itself is actually to unite the Sudanese people around common goals. And after we had the first draft ready, we started connecting with the different bodies in the civil society in Sudan, the different political parties. We started discussing with them this paper, receiving their modification in the paper itself, in the goals and in the demands. And by the end of December, we had, I can say, almost all the political opposition parties signing the Declaration of Freedom and Change, along with the Sudanese Professionals Association, and along with the armed rebel movements, some of the armed rebel movements, some of the NGOs. So basically we had the largest coalition ever in the history of Sudan, which is now known as the Forces of Freedom and Change, that has led the revolution in Sudan starting from January 2019, and that still exists until now to help supporting the transitional system in Sudan. I also want to mention, after doing this very quick background, I want to speak a little bit about the social movement and the field committee role. So when we started organizing protests in Sudan, the first body that actually oversee all the different protests, that the people that were sitting down and writing the routes, where to go and where to start protesting and how to quickly disappear and reappear again in different spots. These were the field committee, what we call the field committee in Sudan. And this committee has led actually the whole scene of protesting throughout the revolution, and it was formed by this collective work. So we had members from the different bodies inside SPA, members also from each of the political parties and the different parties forming the Forces of Freedom and Change. And without this collective work of them, I believe we couldn't do anything regarding the revolution. So it is a shout out to all of them. And they are basically not known to anyone at all. They are still working behind the scenes, working with the grassroots movements, organizing them. They have somehow helped in establishing the youth committees, the neighborhood committees. If any one of you know the situation in Sudan, these are the actual players in the scene now and throughout the revolution in Sudan, the neighborhood committees which are basically formed by youth and women. The role of doctors also was pivotal in the whole situation, as I said, because the Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors played a pivotal role in establishing SPA itself. And also throughout the revolution and the different protests, we would have doctors protesting and also doctors in the emergency teams having emergency clinics around the different spots in the streets, providing healthcare, emergency healthcare to the different protesters. And so things went on from the January 2019 until we had the sit-in on April, 6th of April, and the sit-in started in front of the military headquarters. And the sit-in lasted for 2 months, and it was one of the most historic moments, I believe, in the history of Sudan. Anyone who has seen the sit-in or been there would see how beautiful the scene was there in the sit-in. It was one of the uniting moments in the history of Sudan. You would see Sudanese people from all the different backgrounds, ethnicities, regions, religions, just being there, chanting with slogans of freedom and of unity, and having huge power and great hopes for the better future of Sudan. And I believe it will remain as the most beautiful or great moment in the history of Sudan, these 2 months, until it was dispersed on the 3rd of June. And again, we had the most depressing and frustrating moments in the revolution, the aftermath of the 3rd of June, and the thing that drive to disperse itself. So it was basically some sort of try to break this unity and to break the whole process of change and the whole project of change. The brutality and the killing, the rape, dumping bodies into the Nile, all of these horrific scenes, the drive behind it was to break everything and to build fear inside everyone that this cannot last longer, this cannot go further. After that, the internet connection was off. We had no internet connection in Sudan after the 3rd of June. People started again hiding, going around. We lost touch with each other, SPA, FFC, everyone. And it was, the air was full of depression. And some of us even just gave up everything. But again, momentum started rising again after the 3rd of June. Of course, I also, it will be good to mention this, that after the 3rd of June, some people started speaking about turning this non-violent movement into a violent one. People started speaking about we should carry arms, we should turn this violent, we cannot defeat the army non-violently, and we should take should take it by our hands, especially the youth, of course, because as I said, it was very horrific, and it took us a lot of jobs, a lot of work to actually go and sit with everyone and try to convince them that turning violent will not help us, that we should remain non-violent, that the only way possible to keep us united is to commit to the peaceful ways of protesting, and to commit to the non-violent way, and that turning violent is the thing that the army actually wants us to go to, then they can defeat us for once and all. So people committed to the non-violence way after the 3rd of June, after a lot of job, and we started again organizing ourselves. We made the civil disobedience, which was very huge. Everyone around Sudan just stopped working. They sat in their homes protesting against the military. And after only 3 weeks, on the 30th of June, we had the largest protest ever since the beginning of the revolution. And for me and for a lot of Sudanese people, it was the actual turning point in this revolution. So basically, they done everything they can do. They shut down the internet. They made whatever they can, killing people, torturing them, dumping them in the Nile. But again, the people came out again. They break fear, and they again protested together and united. So now we have reached the point of agreement after a very long negotiation between the Forces of Freedom and Change and the Transition Military Council, an agreement that has now established the transitional system. Now we have a government led by civilians, led by Dr. Abdullah Hamdok as Prime Minister. We also have a sovereign council that is shared between civilians and military personnel. And we are waiting for the formation of the legislative body for a 3 years and 3 months period of transition, with huge demands and goals and a very large list of things to do, to be done by the government. The whole Declaration of Freedom and Change is now in the Constitutional Declaration itself, that is behind the formation of the whole transition system. And the whole idea behind all all of the goals and demands listed in the Declaration of Freedom and Change, and listed also in the Constitution and Declaration now, is to pave the way for a sustainable democracy in Sudan. So everything there is just to achieve and to reach real democracy in Sudan. That's why we need peace to include everyone in the process of democracy. That's why we need the transitional justice to remove all the social barriers and to make some sort of equality between the Sudanese citizens, the reform of the security sector itself, the reform of the civil services, and the structures of the government. All of that is just to help building a real democracy in Sudan. And the challenges that will face the transitional period are huge as well. But I believe, and most of our people back home believe, that if we remained united and if this sort of collective work remained going, nothing actually can stand in the face of the people. And so we are very keen now to continue strengthening our civil society in Sudan, because without a strong civil society, we wouldn't be able to achieve anything, of course. And then also the democracy itself that will come after this 3 period needs a very strong civil society to continue to achieve the process of change and to continue reaching the different goals that we are hoping to reach. So this is basically the strategy now of SPA, is to strengthen the civil society everywhere around Sudan, to build the real democratically independent professional and labor unions, and to continue playing this role of bringing people together and bringing the different institutions and the different organizations inside the civil society together. So I don't want to take much longer time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alassam. So I will, as I said it earlier, maybe it's better just to have a conversation with you all, so you be free to ask Dr. Mohamed Alassam, and he will engage with you in this kind of dialogue. But I will give my seat to a person that I respect a lot, Assistant Professor May Hassan. She gained her PhD from Harvard University. She is Assistant Professor of Political Science at the University of Michigan. Her past research, including numerous articles and a book that has largely focused on the politicization of public sector for social control in developing countries. May please help me out.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to say thank you for all the work that you did for Sudan moving forward, and thank you for hosting this wonderful event. So I will moderate the discussion. I think it would be best if we took 2 questions at a time and then let the doctor speak. And so with that, I'll open it up. Please.
Salam alaikum. It's so good to have you here. And not only this, as symbolic as it is, we're all looking at you as part of this new revolution and new hope that is in Sudan. The thing that bothered me, there are so many things to say, and I think all of us know you have a huge and monstrous list to deal with. But the thing that bothers me the most is this notion of democracy, of opening everything up at one point and making everybody vote before there is, I don't know how to put it, otherwise just replace the ripening of the Sudanese avenue where everybody is very well aware of their votes. This, and you know it because I know your history in university, where we had also an open vote, and then you had Hizb al-Ummah and Sadiq. They are much more organized, and they have affiliation that has nothing to do with what is good or bad. Then we have also Hassan al-Turabi, who had already put I mean, this was one of the systems that they had, and now you would have to face, all of us have to face, all of these who are, their affiliation is much more to the Hizb al-Watani, right? To the National Assembly more than they are to us. So what is the notion of assembly? What is the notion of democracy that you have versus a representation? And then the last question I ask, why is it always you have been presented by beautiful women?
I will not answer the latter question. Thank you. So that one of the main things that we kept fighting for is the transition period itself, and for this reason, obviously, because we have like 30 years of dictatorship with no freedoms, no rights, very weak civil society, also very. I believe I can say weak political parties as well. They were weakened, of course, by the regime itself. And with this situation, you cannot have an actual democracy. That's why we fought for the long transition period, and it is now the longest transition period in the history of Sudan, 3 years and 3 months. And we must take advantage of that time in actually building the civil society and strengthening. It is the only way possible. I don't believe if we have any other way, rather than actually go there and work in the grassroots movement, in the capacity building, in every sort possible to strengthen the civil society. And I believe you know that in some places in Sudan, you will not find a single entity, especially the war-conflicted areas in Darfur, Nova Mountains, and Blue Nile. You will go to places where you will not find a single civil society organization actually working with the people. So it is the real job that we should do. We should all as Sudanese people start doing, going there, building these organizations, start working with the Sudanese people in the area of capacity building, in the area of the goals and demands of the change itself, and this is a very long project. It will take a long time, and but we can go through it by taking it step by step, I believe. Yeah, thank you.
Please.
First, I'd like to welcome you here. Thank you for coming and visiting us and covering Sudan. If I could ask you a question about the regional interventions that have been attempting to play a role in the politics of Sudan, with the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. So how have you been able to manage that, considering their intervention in other Arab Spring that turned into an Arab winter? So what mechanisms politically you have been able, and I know, some things that possibly could express and some things can't, but what are the topography for the regional actors that democracy itself and the notion of shifts in Sudan constitute for them a threat, and therefore they want to intervene in the political process?
So thank you for that. The issue of regional intervention in Sudan was very huge, as you know, especially through the negotiation itself. And but also, I believe the 30th of June and the continuing of the protest and the unity of the Sudanese people, they were also convinced that they cannot do so. I believe some of these regional powers and actors actually wanted the TMC to continue and to continue ruling by itself. What are the things behind that? It's not our business, but anyway, they somehow wanted the TMC to rule by itself. And I believe some of them will continue to want that to happen anytime soon. And they will probably take advantage of any moment throughout the transition period that they can achieve that. So it's one of the challenges that we will definitely face. But as I said before, through the unity and the collective work of the Sudanese people, we could defeat all that. We actually did it, and we can continue doing it by our unity and by our collective work. Thank you.
Could I just follow up the question? Has there been a mechanism to prevent foreign funds coming in to disrupt the political process that we're engaged in? Or has there been thought about that?
Again, the question?
Huh?
Can you repeat the question?
I said, have you guys begun to think about preventing foreign funds coming in that tends to try to play a decisive role in disrupting the democratic process?
I don't believe we have discussed that now, but of course we have seen it happening in the negotiation itself, throughout the period of negotiation. The TMC and RSF and other factions inside the security sector in Sudan were supported somehow by these regional powers, by funding, by planning, by everything. So as I said, they will continue, I believe some of them will continue to play that role. But one of the good things that we should take advantage of, that these regional powers themselves, they don't have a united position themselves. And I believe we have somehow, throughout the previous period, we have did a good job regarding this, that they themselves do not have a united position of how to deal with the situation in Sudan. Some wanted RSF to continue as the main power, some others wanted the army to be the main power, some wanted the Islamists, some were against the Islamists. So again, it is the will of the Sudanese people, I believe, that have conquered all these plans, and if we remain united and remain doing our job correctly, we will continue to defeat all of these plans.
So I actually have a question for you, and it's something that I think a lot of us in the diaspora have been wondering, is that what was really amazing about this revolution is that so many of the protests that the SPA put out, the FFC, advertised were all on Facebook. And they had the route maps and said, today we're going to the palace, today we're meeting in this market, we're starting to hear we're going there. Especially in the early days of the revolution, we saw that. And so one, I wanted to ask, what was the decision process? Because it's not just activists and supporters and protesters who see these maps, but also the security apparatus. And we saw a lot of deaths coming out. So that's the first question. And then two, how, given the violence and the repression that you all encountered by the government, I noticed, at least for people looking at the route maps, they started changing. Instead of just saying we're all going to meet here, there were all these smaller neighborhood routes. And so I wanted you also to talk about how maybe you guys started adapting your protest and mobilization strategies to the repression that you guys are facing.
Thank you for that question. And as I mentioned earlier, the decision of which routes to take and at which time should the protest begin and at which neighborhood, all of this job was done by the field committee. I'm not sure if it is the right translation for the name. Is it right? Yeah. So these guys were, it's like a committee formed, as I said, from the different components of the coalition itself. Each and every body of SPA had a member in it, and also each and every body inside the FFC. The first idea was faced by, it was somehow refused by some of the Sudanese people to actually say exactly the place where the protest will begin and at the exact time. This was new in the Sudanese protests and Sudanese uprisings, to actually announce the time of the protest and the actual place that the protest will start in. And we were all very fearful before the 25th of December, the first protest that we have actually announced its location and its exact time. And a lot of people were very doubtful that this is not going to work. But the idea behind this is the idea of challenge itself, that we will stop hiding, we will just go there, and we are calling for everyone to just come and protest, and it was in front of the presidential palace, the first protest itself. So in the 25th of December, basically the streets were full with the security people, NISS, the army, the police. They were just filling every street and every corner. And the protest actually started before the time that we have announced. So we had the people just came to the spot, and we were very excited, and they started protesting even before the time that we have announced, like 15 minutes before the actual process should begin. But one of the things that this field committee was doing, they actually, before deciding the routes and the streets, they would actually go there and they would mark the whole area. They would have groups, different groups in different spots around the actual site of the protest, and they will start chanting from one direction. They will take the police towards them, and when the other area is empty, another group will start protesting. So at that day we had like 11 to 12 different protests, just going around the whole area, and it was very shocking to the security forces themselves. So this is the way that the field committee kept doing their job regarding the protest.
Okay, we can take some questions and we'll have to answer. Yeah. Do you want to say it?
So, you are now as FSC member, you're dealing with a very delicate balance between dealing with the people, civil society, dealing with the newly civilian government, and dealing with the military council. What is your biggest fear during this transition period?
Maybe before you answer, we'll take another question.
Shukran, thank you for being here. So my question is around the international community and your relationship with the international community. It seems like the protests were really indigenous and organic and emerged from Sudan. It didn't come from the outside. But now that things are changing and Bashir is out, there's a space for the United Nations and international aid organizations to come into Sudan and for people to work in civil society in that way. And I ask because when I was in Sudan after the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005, there I found a lot of the most sophisticated civil society activists were in their NGOs, in their community-based organizations. And then as more organizations came from the international community, they started leaving. And they started going into jobs in the United Nations because they spoke English, because they were the most sophisticated activists around. And so civil society started to drain because these people found jobs in the United Nations. And my worry now is that people will find jobs in the government and civil society because the government is now this open place or in the transition, and then civil society will drain in this way. So how might you try to guard against that? I know it's a very difficult dilemma, but guard against people leaving civil society and keeping space for dissent, even dissent in the transition.
Okay, great question. Thank you both. Regarding the challenges, of course, it's a very delicate balance that we are dealing with now, and I believe the most challenge that definitely we will continue to face every and each day back home is the unity of the FFC itself, the unity of the different revolutionary forces throughout the period of transition. I believe this is something that we should keep the unity itself. It is very difficult to actually keep this body united, this coalition, the Forces of Freedom and Change. As I said before, it is the largest coalition in the history of Sudan. It's a coalition of coalitions. So also to give you a heads up, it's basically formed from 5 coalitions. We have the SPA, one of them, the Sudan called coalition, which has the Ummah Party, some of the armed rebel movements, Sudanese Congress Party. We also have the National Consensus Forces, including the Sudanese Communist Party, among others. We have the Unionist Association, also some of the unionist parties. And we have the NGOs also have their own coalition. So it's very huge. We are speaking about more than 120 different organizations inside the FFC. And it has been very difficult to keep it going, and it will continue to be very difficult to keep this coalition going. I believe if we lost some sort the unity of FFC, and then we lost the unity of the civil society around the goals of the revolution, it will be very difficult to keep the process of change going. So this is one of the major issues that we have to deal with it each and every day. And but I believe most of the organizations inside FFC and most of the members working in the scene now, they have the same belief that this unity should continue, and that we cannot be again fragmented, especially, of course, in this period of transition. Of course, after 3 years, each coalition and each party will go to work their own way through the elections, but now with the huge challenges that we will face, we cannot lose our unity. Regarding your question, we had that in mind in SPA. That's why one of the things that we have decided in SPA is not to be part of the government, not to be part of the Sovereign Council. We will only have some seats inside the legislative body to play our role in monitoring somehow, to play the role of a watchdog throughout the transitional period and then beyond in the democracies to come, and also to play the role that I have mentioned before in strengthening and building the civil society throughout the 3 years and beyond.
And we'll take 2 questions from this side, 1 and 2.
Thank you. It's hard to imagine what it must have been like as you sit here and talk about it for this month, but thank you. I'm just thinking when you talk about democracy, civil society, in the work that we do, we see so-called democracies, including our own country, India, democracy, where you have such criminalization of dissent. You see it in Tanzania, you see it in so many places. So this whole word democracy, I'm sitting with it and thinking of the aspirations of the people that have led to this change. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the building of, for lack of a better term, nation state, where you have independent judiciary and legislature and executive, and some of those goalposts that people know they're moving towards that. Because on one hand, we can assume that the professional NGOs and civil society will suddenly get people ready for democracy, but it is a participatory and engagement, and what political spaces are being created in different, in towns and cities and villages where people are expressing what their aspirations are. So they don't lose faith 4 years or 7 years down the line that this is our destiny, we have always been like this. So if you could talk a little bit about that would be great. Thank you.
I will say nothing more than what you have just said. I totally agree with you, yeah. And this is the idea behind us trying to actually strengthen and build a civil society, because I believe, and we all believe, that if we actually could mobilize people and making them engage more and more in their own issues, building new entities, new organizations, then the scene will be totally different than the scene before the revolution itself. It's already different now, because now we have huge participation from different sectors that has never ever before participated in the political life in Sudan. We have huge participation from the youth, from the women themselves. So now it is different, but it should go now in the more of organizing manner rather than the previous one. And of course, new entities will emerge, new political parties, new coalitions. If we did all that, if we actually worked in the grassroots, building the civil society and strengthening, all of that will happen, and the participation will get more and more better. And with this youth participation that we have seen throughout the revolution, we don't want to lose this power just to the old political school. We have to keep them engaged because if we lose the youth and the women who have participated in the revolution, the situation will not be different. Even though we might have voting system and everything, but with the old school in Sudan, I believe it will be no different than before. That's why we will have a very fragile democracy again and again. We will have a military coup like the previous revolutions that we have. The new factor in this revolution is the power of the people, the youth participation, the women participation, the new sectors that have participated in the revolution. We have to keep them engaged. And if we kept them engaging, they will produce, the society itself will produce new entities and will produce new ideas and new ways to go through the different challenges and to achieve all the goals and demands and to keep achieving the project of change in Sudan.
All right, so let's take two questions, one here and then one over here.
So I thank you first of all for your presentation. It's very, very clear, and appreciate the situation of where the revolution is now today. My question dovetails with the last question, which is you mentioned the neighborhood committees, largely comprised of women and youth. I'm wondering what role they're playing now and what role do you envision that they're going to play in a new democracy? And is there a model of democracy that you're trying to build? Is there a blueprint that you're using in terms of the kind of democracy that you want to build? And lastly, what role can civil society in the U.S. play in terms of supporting civil society in Sudan?
And then one question over here.
I have two questions. They're a little bit unrelated. So my first question is, I'm curious about what you think the impact of some of the government and military organized violence against activists has been. And of course, Sudan has a long history of this kind of violence, especially against leftists and activists and artists. But in this most recent revolution, I think we saw a lot of people be exposed to whether imprisonment or torture or kind of these top-down punitive measures. What is the impact of that been? How has that influenced both people's strategies or pessimism or fueled their political analysis? So that's one question. The other question is similar to the question asked a little bit ago. So historically in Sudan, transitional periods like this one have been opportunities for the right wing to kind of create their own agenda and take over. And so I'm curious in part because a lot of people do see this place that we've come to, this transitionary period, as a sort of failure compared to the dream that they had, what they thought this revolution could bring. So I'm not saying I think it's a failure. I think there's many amazing beautiful things that come out of it, but what are kind of the larger concerns about this transitionary period, harkening back to these other historical moments that look similar?
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Again, the issue is in Sudan, no one actually believes that we'll have a swift change of everything. We'll go from 0 to 100 in a couple of days. We're speaking about 30 years of dictatorship in Sudan. The whole issue now is that we have gained freedoms and rights now in Sudan. We should stick to these gains and we should build on them for more and more change by each and every day going by. This is the whole idea. And this is why we need to keep building our different institutions, and we have to keep having these very large sectors of people engaged in the whole issues of Sudan. Regarding the issue of what democracy we want in Sudan, it's not yet ready. We don't have. I don't have the right answer for that by now, but it's already there in the Constitutional Declaration that this is a parliamentary system and a lot of things, non-centralized state and country and issues like that. But we will have in some period during the transitional period, the Constitutional Congress, if I am right in the translation, will where the different organizations and institutions will sit together and decide what they want in regarding the time after the transition period, regarding the democracy that they want and how they want it to be, and etc. What the international community, the US, the NGOs could do regarding Sudan and how they could support the transitional period. As I said, the idea itself that there is a change now in Sudan. Things are different, and we need to support this change. It will take time for Sudan to be a real democracy and to achieve the different goals and demands of the people, but support is needed urgently. First of all, the transitional government itself. It must be successful. We cannot have a failed transitional government, because this will bring back the sentiment and it will bring back definitely the old regime, and it will be very depressive and frustrating to the people that nothing is changed in their daily lives. The basic needs should be available for everyone, and this also needs work to be done by the government itself. And of course, regarding the help in building the civil society and strengthening it, a lot of things can be done regarding that by the help of the regional and international community and the different NGOs around the world.
Yeah, and then there was a question from here about how you guys were dealing with how the repression from the top was.
Yes, okay,
was
the repression, yeah.
strategies.
So yes, one of the main strategies that we used to actually defeat the repression of the Bashir regime was very few members from like SPA were known to the public. So basically 2 of SPA, from the whole SPA, were just publicly known. One of them including me, and the other is Dr. Mohamed Yusuf. He's a professor at the University of Khartoum. So we had only 2 faces inside Sudan from SPA. The others were not known to anyone, even to the public. And it was also one of the things that the government used actually to demonize somehow SPA, that they are not here, they are a ghost organization. Their whole members are outside. And of course, the Sudanese diaspora helped a lot in doing the media job regarding SPA. So we had spokesperson from all around the world to speak on behalf of the SPA. And me, myself, when I first appeared to the public, one of the reasons why I appeared is to say that no SPA is actually here in Sudan, and we are leading this from inside Sudan. And yes, I was detained 2 days after that, but actually it helped a lot. Yeah, it helped a lot in actually saying to the people that this is a real organization and we are actually working here in Sudan. And then the people understood why no other members of SPA are known after me being arrested. Then no one asked that question, why are you and who are you? So we had like different structures inside SPA and FFC as well, different levels of structure. So the first level, when they get arrested, there will be another line of structure will take over, and a third and a fourth. And a lot of SPA actually members were arrested, even though they did not appear, but somehow they got arrested. Yeah, so it wasn't just me and Dr. Mohamed Yusuf. But the idea of having alternative structures all the time, ready to lead the way and ready to take over, was key in actually defeating the repressive regime in Sudan. So, yeah, I hope that was a good answer. Yeah.
All right, great. We'll take these 2. Well, we'll do one at a time. So, John, let's get yours.
On the international front, what is the prospect of extending the United Nations UNAMID mandate and preventing the turnover of all the United Nations and African Union positions to the Rapid Supply Force? And secondly, the Rapid Supply Force, with the returning entities from Yemen, presents a really interesting, how do you think this, what's the future of the Rapid Supply Force being integrated in some sense?
Okay, so the Rapid Support Forces are basically a militia formed by al-Bashir from the early days of the war in Darfur. And I believe most of you know what they are basically called the Janjaweed. So we have discussed that, of course, with them throughout the negotiation in the part of the security sector reform. So the ultimate goal that we want to reach in the security sector is to have a national united professional army in Sudan. One national united professional army that has nothing to do with politics. And it's not an easy thing to do, of course, and to achieve. But the good thing is that they are open to discuss it, and they are open to actually have a dialogue about it, and they are open also to discuss the different ways to reach that. But of course, the confidence itself is very weak with the military personnel regarding the history of Sudan. That every 3 times in the history of Sudan we had military coups against democracies. Of course, not by the military by itself. Each and every military coup was somehow supported by a political party in Sudan. And that's also another issue that we have to deal with. So it's never in the history of the Sudan that the military by their own selves go and take power and defeat democracy, but it was always with the help of some political party. But of course, it is in the culture of not just the Sudanese army, it is the culture, I believe, in a lot of armies in the region, military personnel in the region, in somehow some parts of Africa, believe that they cannot be ruled or directed or have orders from a civilian. And this is a very long way to go to actually convince and to change that culture that the army role is not to rule. Yeah, they have very distinct and clear things to do, not to rule by any means. Regarding the UNAMID and the issue that they are leaving Sudan, of course, after they had some discussions with the RSF that they will give them their places in Darfur or whatsoever, it was of course largely refused by, and I believe they even took that statement out from their pages in Twitter and Facebook. Yeah. So it will not be accepted, of course, that they will give their structures and places and buildings to or handle it to the RSF forces.
So my question has to do with the regional balance. I think it was a few years ago that the U.S. Secretary of State said that nearly 70% of conflicts in Africa are in the Horn of Africa. So what's happened in Sudan has given enormous hope, particularly to countries like Eritrea. And my specific question is when you said it just spontaneously happened, because I've read different analysis that it wasn't so much spontaneity, there was work that had been brewing that suddenly sort of came up front. And sort of related to my brother's question, what is the formula, because we need it?
Okay, when I said spontaneous, I didn't mean that the revolution itself happened spontaneously. I meant the exact timing, of course, of the revolution. So I don't believe you can ever set a time for a start of revolution. The spark somehow happens all the time spontaneously, or not by being planned, the spark of the revolution. So when the protests started, it started against the rise in the prices of bread and fuel. The first protest itself is like controversial in Sudan now. Some say it started in Al-Damazin and the others say it started in al-Bashir. So we have now like two cities fighting against who started the revolution in Sudan. But anyway, when the work, of course, as I said, the work of SPA started a long time ago, 2 years ago in 2016. And of course, we had like an uprising in 2011 and 2013. And all of that actually led to what has happened in 2018. It was a build-up of work, of course, by the civil society, by the opposition parties, and by the different organizations. There is no, of course, a right plan or a right way to follow in different places. I believe each society and each country has its own model that can work. I don't believe we can give the right model for other country to follow. But of course, it is knowing the reality above all. What is the reality of the community and what will work and what will not work is the answer for the question. Because having plans that has nothing to do with the reality, with the community, will not work by any means. And working with the grassroots, of course, is the answer for everything. If you just work through the people, bringing them together around goals that can at some time not link to changing government at the beginning, of course, because I will just give that example of the work of CCSB, the Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors. When it started working, it never mentioned the government or changing the government or changing the system. Actually, it brought the doctors together and it speak about the issues of the doctors, the things that will bring all the doctors together, the issues regarding their rights, their salaries, the health system, the basic needs of patients, and we had the largest nationwide strike in 2016, and that was the basis on which we built SPA itself. And then we had the fruit of that work of 2016 at the start of the revolution itself on December 2018, because the doctors were the first professionals to actually go on strike. At 2018, on December, they went on a strike, a nationwide strike that ended on, I believe, June or July actually. From December 2018 ended on July 2019, and it was the longest strike of doctors around the world. And that was done by the work of 2016 when we brought the doctors together by the issues of the doctors. It was not linked to changing government. Yeah.
Thank you. Question back there?
Dr. Mohamed, shukran. It's a great experience that we can all learn. I'm from Eritrea myself, and I'm trying to see if we can draw something from your experience by changing a dictator. One question I have for you is, what drove the military to kind of give up and to just, okay, we're going to follow the people? Were there any like weak points within the military that the youth or the revolution kind of penetrated through, or was it just the military just followed the people? That's one. And the second one is, how much faith do you have in the fact that al-Bashir will get the justice that he deserved? And what about the other generals that were indicted at the ICC for the crimes that they committed? Will they come to justice? What's the demand of the people inside Sudan towards those people?
Thank you. The issue of justice in Sudan, of course, one of the things that we have agreed upon and that is written in the Constitutional Declaration is the formation of the Transitional Justice Commission. So we are speaking about also 30 years of brutality, of torture, of killing, a lot of crimes against Sudanese people that will need time and truth and reconciliation, and not other things that should be done throughout the transition period. So we are waiting now for the formation of this commission. And of course now al-Bashir is in prison. He's in the same prison that I was in, it's called prison, alongside with other 21 or something members of the previous regime. But of course, there are also a lot of people outside the prison. Justice also needs time to happen. So I believe through this Transitional Justice Commission and through the reforms that the judiciary system itself needs to follow, we can reach that justice and accountability, because it is one of the pillars, of course, of the revolution. So in the revolution we had 3 words: freedom, peace, and justice. This was the slogan of the Sudanese revolution. And the Sudanese people will not let the justice not happening. They will go on marches and protest until the justice is achieved.
About the military?
How we could handle
how did you able to penetrate into the military to kind of have them admit, okay, the people are winning, let's follow them? Or
So basically, as I said, it is in the culture of our military. I believe that they should be ruling, that they should rule, and that they cannot take they cannot take their decisions from a civilian person or things like that. But and they were willing actually to rule by themselves. The TMC, they tried to do so. They somehow took a lot of time maneuvering around the negotiations, around the protests, around the demands of the people. And then the 3rd of June happened, disperse of the sitting, they cut the internet and everything else. But I believe the turning point for them and for the regional players themselves was the 30th of June, when we had the largest protest ever in the revolution itself. And it was basically done by very basic ways. So the youth committees, the neighborhood committees, the field committee would go and knock the doors, would go to sit in the neighborhoods, starting talks with the different people, getting them again back, regaining hope and working together until we could achieve the 30th of June, which happened not only in Khartoum, in every and each state around Sudan. And by then they have just done everything to stop this. They have killed, they have cut the internet, they have done everything they can to stop this from going on. And so they basically gave up and somehow signed the agreement, leaving all of the executive power to the government, having a very small job to be done in the Sovereign Council. But it's also, the challenge of dealing with the military will always be there, I believe, throughout the transition period and also beyond, after we have the democracy. Yeah.
I'll take this question here. And I think this goes until 4:30. So we'll take this question and we'll let Dr. Nagy wrap up.
Okay, thank you. I just want to reiterate his last question about international criminal court and the case of al-Bashir. I think this issue in particular need to be expressed clearly, because it's such a very fundamental issue that we challenge the democracy and the transition of the 3 years, which is justice and reform. And I think, and if I could also bring the voice of the people from Darfur to the surface here, the people of Darfur have a very clear demand regarding the justice, which is the handling of Omar al-Bashir to international criminal court. And that would be a very steep and uphill challenge to the transitional government. And but not being any politically correct at this moment, I would like if you can elaborate how we would negotiate the economy between the real demand to
to achieve peace and real justice, versus that you have a military personnel who are part of this government, whose interests lie on blocking any real justice reform. It is very kind of difficult thing, I know, but I would like if you could elaborate on that comment.
Okay, this is not a question and answer thing to this. It's much more of a discussion, I guess. The issue of al-Bashir being handled to the ICC, it's a debate back home, and you know that for sure. It's not like a clear-cut or a ready-made answer that I can deliver here. Some people even think that ICC is too good for al-Bashir to be handled to. Actually, I'm saying it very clearly. And yeah, al-Bashir is wanted for crimes against humanity in Darfur. The crimes against humanity itself is mentioned in the Constitutional Declaration that he should be tried against it. And I would say that even the military personnel were not against al-Bashir being handled to the ICC. I'm saying this from inside the negotiation. We have discussed that this is a very important issue for us and for the whole Sudanese people, and especially Sudanese people from the war conflicted areas. And it's not like a huge deal for them. They only said that this is your issue and you get the government and then you can handle him to the ICC if you want to do so. And I believe it will be, of course, one of the issues to be discussed in the peace agreements and the peace dialogues ahead. So it's a debatable issue, as I said, but definitely dealing with the military itself and dealing with the security sector in Sudan is a struggle, and it will continue to be a struggle throughout the transitional period. The security sector in Sudan have their own parallel state. I believe some of you know that. They have their own businesses, their own companies, and their own everything. And this is the real struggle that the transitional government in Sudan will face, that they should take all the business and the economy under the government, and stop what the security sector is doing in Sudan. So we are speaking about NIS. NIS is the National Intelligence Security Services in Sudan, who have their own businesses, their own gold companies and everything. And also we have the Rapid Support Forces, who also have their own businesses and everything, and the military. So we have these three apparatus in Sudan working in the security sector, and they are competing each other regarding the businesses they run. So it's not an easy thing to do, of course, but it can be done, of course, by the will of the people and by the work of the government that should also handle the regional powers that actually are helping. They cannot do business if they don't have regional powers behind them, of course. And this is one key thing that the government can do, stopping all the regional support to the different security sector companies. And so it's not like a single answer that I can give you. It's a whole of a discussion that we can make about this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mohamed Nagy.